sort of like using the journaling as to fuel my creativity, I started realizing I'm actually building something here. I'm building a story and I'm building sort of a game.
We've been called a lot of things. And we're inspired by everything around us, including each other. The individuals that have inspired me the most create beauty and positive change. To me, that's the highest form of art, and it deserves the loudest praise. This is Shout Out, the art of self-expression. On this episode of Shout Out, the animator, illustrator, and designer, Maro Smith.
Yeah, I am Bahamian. I was raised in the Bahamas and beach. I'm always at the beach. And I think I try to pull that kind of vibrance of what you see into my work. So I had to find a balance with what is work, what is playtime, what is me time, it's sort of like a spiritual thing, like what is time to get back to you. Because it wasn't just the art, it was the creativity behind some of the games. I'm a big fan of like RPG games. My purest way of escaping, it was playing those games, using problem solving, just getting enthralled in these worlds that I can interact with. Gravitated to these things when I was younger for a reason, and now I'm kind of gravitating to them again to kind of rekindle that inspiration. And that's been fueling a lot of the work I've been creating lately. I'm grateful that I've been able to start a business and thrive with it. There's no other option for me. I've been kind of built to do this. I'm an artist. And I've been able to find a space where I can work and sustain myself. And now it just feels like I got that going, and now I'm getting the jobs that kind of reflect the work I'm putting in.
Welcome to the show, Maro Smith. How are you doing, man?
Hi, I'm great.
To kind of set the stage for everyone watching, we went to school together, and you're an extremely talented illustrator and animator. And I just kind of want to dive in here and get your backstory. So if we can start off, just kind of tell me, where did your love for illustration start?
Okay. That is kind of hard to pinpoint, but I think it just started when I was a kid and just, being exposed to movies at a young age. And it was, of course, grew up watching Disney movies, but it was the beginning of everything was a clamshell VHS, of course. When at the beginning of those VHS, sometimes it would show behind the scenes of everything being produced. And that's the aspect of the whole process that I loved. I loved seeing them making everything come to life with just drawings. And so that's where my initial love came from. That curiosity of seeing how it's made.
You were raised in the Bahamas, correct?
Yeah, I am Bahamian. I was raised in the Bahamas, and my first time living in the US was when I went off to school for about those 4 years.
You're in the Bahamas right now, right?
Yeah, I live in Abaco Island, and it was pretty destroyed from the Hurricane Dorian. So it's been a long road to recovery here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Looking at your illustrations, it seemed like there was such a vibrance and energy to your drawings, to the characters that you were doing. If you can kind of explain your love for that style.
I think it all boils down to my love of nature, really. That's my main source of inspiration, and that's where I pull a lot of my, my subject matter and my color palette. I pull directly from images of, hundreds of images of like nature, beach. I'm always at the beach. And I think I try to pull that kind of vibrance of what you see into my work, and just capturing the lighting of everything. And I think that's one of the main things I've been trying to focus on with my artwork, and to really capture that vibrance. It's like, how can I make lighting feel as real as possible? That's what I'm seeing in like actual environment.
That translates so well. Like when I look at your work, it just puts me in a good mood because of the color palette that you choose. Knowing the fact that you live in the Bahamas, I'm like, this guy is just absorbing this amazing environment and it's being reflected through his art. It's a joy to look at. Do you I have a question, and this might sound weird, but do you dance?
Um, not publicly.
Because and the reason why I ask is because like when I look at your characters, there's such a sense of movement, even if the characters are posed like standing still, they have this feeling as though they are in mid motion. They possess this life.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You had mentioned Disney. Were there any kind of other inspirations or things that you were drawing upon as you were growing up?
Really was inspired by just the games I played. Honestly, I would think the games I played was a little bit of a bigger inspiration to me because it wasn't just the art, it was the creativity behind some of the games. I'm a big fan of like RPG games, and I played what was my favorite growing up. It was definitely in the Final Fantasy era, realm of games, and I
Yeah.
gravitated to those because it was my purest way of escaping. It was playing those games, using problem solving, just getting enthralled in these worlds that I can interact with. So that's my love of games actually influence a lot of what I do now currently. And as you know, we went to school, I at least wanted to like make them for a time, and I kind of lost that love for a very long time. For a very long time, because going through school, you kind of have to change yourself and adapt your style to kind of be professional. And along the way, I kind of lost the love of like what I was doing. But recently, I've been trying to get back into that mode of like, okay, I gravitated to these things when I was younger for a reason, and now I'm kind of gravitating to them again to kind of rekindle that inspiration, and that's been fueling a lot of the work I've been creating lately.
Yeah, and I see that, and I've gone through my own evolution as well, and I mean again that's one of the reasons why I started this is to stay inspired and to be inspired by other artists and to remember that because school was intense.
It
life
was.
life is intense, and it's amazing to have these conversations. Like I spoke with a fellow classmate, Brian Runlet, and he echoes this exact same notion where he's like, school is rough. And in talking with Lance, Lance, who he's doing amazing, he's working at Disney,
Mhm.
and even Lance was like, dude, school was rough. And I'm like, you work at Disney, is it rough at Disney? He's like, not compared to school beat us up. But
We went through something.
yeah, it was, I mean, to give context to people that are watching this, it was a 4-year degree in less than 2 years. And we felt that every single month. And I we had conversations about this, but there's a certain amount of posturing that you do while you're in. You're like, I'm not going to let this get to me. I'm not going to let anybody see inside that this is really eating me up. I personally had a nervous breakdown during our scripting
Oh wow.
class, and I'm grateful for that actual experience because I could not do anything. There was one day where it all came crashing down, and all of like my mental fears were really attacking me. And the only thing I could do was like I just needed to feel like I was physically getting away. So I went for a very, very long walk. And on that walk, I realized I'm like, this is so ridiculous that I've built it up in my head that this is this big thing. I came out here on a mission, and I'm still going to do that. It doesn't mean that this particular class is what I'm going to be doing. I think that's what I'm finding out with this specific class, is that this isn't what I'm going to be doing. And by the time I came back from that, I had not only calmed down, had gained perspective, but I kind of gained a tool in life. So really, school pushed us to the very brink. There were so many classes that I was like, this is not for me. this particular class was not for me. And getting through was, there was a decompression mode.
Everything you spoke about, I think I was so numb from the experience, I couldn't really process all of that happen at once. Because for me, being an international student, it was also a kind of, I can't fail because this is financial. This is like, and this is a whole commitment that I can't afford to fail a class, because that's gonna reset my visa and that's gonna delay a lot of things. So there was that added pressure on me to be perfect and like just make it through this, and everything will work out. And we went to school during 2008, a recession period, and it was not very easy for an international student to get hired at that point. And so I went through years of just trying to like kind of numb myself and deal with that reality of like my dreams might be kind of really deferred at this moment. And I'm happy to hear that you had tools to kind of work through that at the moment, but I was really in my 20s, just really wanted to make great stuff, and I didn't have any tools to really deal with it. And it kind of affected me and my work for years after that.
Yeah. I'm really happy to hear that you're moving forward, and it sounds like you're really coming into kind of another golden age of your life, of like really, bringing it back and remembering the love, because that's essentially what I had to do. And it's weird because I've seen that multiple times, having these conversations with other artists, that it's like, you get tested. We hear about this, like the hero's journey, and it's the dark night of the soul, where it feels like, oh, that's no joke. Like when you go on this quest, that's why that portion of that story translates. That's why it connects with people, because people that extend themselves in that way, we all get tested that way. But I'm so happy to hear that you're on to that phase. So tell me what's going on right now, man. What are you into?
I'm self-employed. I have been self-employed for about going on 7 years now. And that's been going well. It was a grind at first, but I feel like you said, like, I feel like I'm coming into another phase where I was talking about this with another friend. I was like, I can't just kind of create fearlessly now. I just want to put stuff out there. I don't care if it's going to synergize with, getting work. I just want to make stuff. And I'm grateful that I've been able to kind of, start a business and kind of thrive with it. And I'm doing there's no other option for me. I've been kind of built to do this. I'm an artist, and I've been able to find a space where I can work and sustain myself. And now it just feels like I got that going, and now I'm getting the jobs that kind of reflect the work I'm putting in.
Making that transition into being a professional artist, and you're being an entrepreneur as well. Was there any kind of and I'm kind of projecting a little bit because I went through this phase, and there was a sense of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or imposter syndrome. Did you go through that, or was it kind of like, no, I'm switching it in my head and I'm going forward?
Definitely, there was a few years of imposter syndrome. I took me not getting hired in the industry and not really fitting into, a company mold like that. I took it as like, I'm just not good enough. My artwork isn't good enough. And I think in some areas, that everyone can grow. We all grow and get better if you stick with it. But I thought that, it was a brief moment, but I thought I should just switch into something else, because maybe art just won't be profitable for me at this moment. And I get way less imposter syndrome now. Like I said, I don't care as much. It's not as dire.
Yeah.
But it comes and goes.
Yeah. For anybody listening that is, thinking about getting into art, this is also a very important point that I want to stress, is that, people who are we are working professionally in a creative capacity. We still think that, we still battle those types of thoughts. And, as a young artist looking up to, other people and like seeing their portfolios, I'm like, oh man, I'll never be that amazing or whatever. And you kind of battle that because you look around from one artist to the other and everyone's style is so different. So it can be very distracting and feel like, oh, I'm not as good as that. Well, you're not meant to be that artist. He has a completely different style, and it's like you can get caught up in that zone. But just know from like my perspective, I look at your art, it is incredible, and you should have confidence in that.
Thank you. Thanks again. And the comparison, you really have to take the pressure off yourself, so to speak, in terms of not just work, but just in life in general. You have to take that pressure off yourself because it acts as a hindrance. And like I want to tell a lot of artists that are younger than me, even now, I get artists who ask me to teach me how to draw like you still to this day. And I tell them, just keep drawing because your style is distinct and it needs that time to develop. And we were in an environment where, we were kind of forced to conform to a certain style.
Yeah.
And I think that was the most detrimental thing to me at that time. I think most young artists need a space where they can feel safe to kind of develop their own language.
And that's something that you need, like every single artist needs to learn, in their own process. Like, how do you get to that space? So let me ask you, how did you find that kind of space, or how did you create that for yourself so that you could put the art out that you wanted to?
I think there was definitely a moment I feel that I'm trying to recall right now where I just kind of got it. It was, I think everything that I did to kind of get to that space was outside of art. It was me kind of getting my footing in life, so to speak. It's like I said, that numb period, there was some years that I can't even recall because it just felt like I was just walking through a haze. And I still had to kind of take charge of my life in a certain way. I had to, first of all, I moved away from my home island. I kind of spent some years in a different island away from my home. The Bahamas, we're set up a chain of islands. So I lived in one city and I moved to a second city. And that phase of my life, I kind of had to just work out. Okay, what are you doing? What do you want to do? You want to be an artist, but are you making things are you making things that you like, that you're proud of? And being a freelancer, you kind of spend a lot of years, like you said, you're worried about bills, you're worried about just, surviving. And that you can create in a space like that. And the work I did, I'm not proud to show anyone because I just remember the stress behind it. And so it was taking the reins in my business. I had to say, okay, you can't grind at this age anymore. You can't spend hours and hours in front of your computer desk because you're getting older and you also want to do other things with your life. So I had to find a balance with what is work, what is playtime, what is me time, it's sort of like a spiritual thing. Like, what is time to get back to you? And I remember it was last time I worked at a media firm, and the media firm was where I think I had my breaking point. It was when I couldn't run from all the things that I was trying to deal with, all the disappointment in life. And I realized just working at a 9 to 5 was just not really meant for me, because in the nature of our work, it's draining. It's draining having to come up with ideas. And at the time I was working on advertising campaigns in a creative sense, coming up with ideas. And that broke me. And I realized that I just don't have that energy in me. Sadly, it kind of drained my productivity for a number of years. And I had to find a space where I can only take on a certain amount of work. And I had to be careful about who I work with and the projects I work with, because all those things started to drain me mentally. And I'm still dealing with that to this day. So I'm in a better space now. I feel like I said, I have my footing. I'm less worried about work. Work is going to come and go, but I'm being more discerning about the projects I work on, because those projects kind of fuel the current art I'm working on personally.
So you brought up, the balance of, work versus play and what's going to give back to you? What are some of the things that you do that are just outside of art? It's just for you. It's just to kind of recharge your soul.
Every day I go to the beach. I go to a shoreline and I just spend time in nature. And yeah, my friends don't know why I do it, but I know why I do it. I just need to get away from, screens for one, and just be in a space where I can just walk around, pick up a staff and just go for a long walk, get lost in nature. And another thing I do for me is I kind of have been excessively note taking. All my ideas, I usually draw them out, but then I started journaling a lot more. Was that the right answer?
Could hold up right now just books and books and books of journaling. My brothers would tell you, they're like, oh yeah, he's a freaking note-taking machine. But yeah, what kind of things do you take notes on?
Really anything. It's literally just a mind dump. And yeah, I got really good at filling up the books. It was really bad for me to actually go back and read over some of the stuff. But what I realized, I kept I kept coming back to the same ideas. And like I realized after all these random things, my thoughts, how I'm feeling at the moment, what I have to do, just a random to-do list, grocery list, a random phrase in my head, or just a thought, or even just a doodle. My sketchbooks are really just loaded with like text and notes. But in the midst of that, and sort of like using the journaling as to fuel my creativity, I started realizing I'm actually building something here. I'm building a story and I'm building sort of a game. And that's why I said that's kind of sparked me going back to the things I love. I kept coming back to I keep writing out, okay, this mechanic would work, this would work, how this character work. And there was no structure to it. It was just a repeating habit.
I call them satellites.
Satellites, they just hover around.
Because what I started noticing as I was taking these notes, I'm like, I have a really sharp long-term memory. And for whatever reason, some of my ideas that would come back, these satellites, I'm like, oh, this has been orbiting for 7 years now, and I've never put it down. And are you familiar with Julia Cameron with her book, The Artist's Way?
No, I'm not sure. I'm familiar.
So essentially, she's talking about what we organically started doing with journaling and creative journaling in specific, where she calls it her morning pages, and she's just made it a religious activity, and she stresses how important it is for artists to do this. So it brings me a lot of joy to like hear that you stumbled upon it very much the way I did, because I heard about her work after, and I was like, oh sweet, we're on to something, because I was already doing this. She has even more tools to like sharpen the that process, but you can go through, sift through, and see like, oh, that's a really good idea. It's been a few days. I have the perspective enough to know that's a good idea. And then some of them you're like, that's awful. I'm throwing that away. I'm never going to look at that again. And getting back to that idea of the satellites, it's like once that goes around several times, you're like, I continue to have this idea. I think I should trust it, So it's awesome to hear that like you've got, it sounds like you've got a game working out, like you're working on a story, man, and I'm excited to hear more about it. Do you want to share some about it right now, or do you kind of want to wait? And
I'm kind of waiting. Like you said, you have to edit. You have to kind of step away from things and come back to it. And for this one, I think it's been orbiting for pretty much since high school for me. And it's strange. Like that story I would have told then is not the story I want to tell now, but it still has the same. It still is the same in its core. So it's kind of reaffirming to hear that what I've been doing, theories that I've been having about my own process and trying to figure that out so I can be a little bit better with getting back to it. It's reaffirming to hear that this is actually a thing that we go through, creatives, because I kind of broke my process down into 4 phases, and it seems like reviewing is one of them. I take time when I don't want to create anything. I don't feel like I need to rest. I go back and I review all the things, my sketches, my notes, and all of that. And that's been keeping me more consistent with the down periods, because the down periods are going to come. There's going to be times where I'm too tired and I can't work on client work or even my personal work. But I know I can do these to get back to my process. So that's kind of awesome.
You said that, you've been working on this story idea and it's changed, but you've been working on it since high school. Just know that James Cameron had worked on Avatar in high school. He worked on Abyss. He had notes on Abyss and Avatar while he was in high school. And those notes sat in his dresser drawer for years and years and years before he was able to actualize them. So I can't wait to see, like, once this thing gets actualized, man. It's really awesome.
I'm excited.
Is there any advice that you would give a young artist that's looking to create anything, or specifically toward like illustration, gaming, or animation?
I think, I go back to what I said I do for myself. You have to take the pressure off. Take the pressure off yourself, and I can't tell anyone how to do that exactly. But you're in environments, you're being bombarded with all sorts of ideas, all sorts of influences, and it's you feel that pressure to kind of, you're not keeping up with it. And I would tell I tell the artists that I speak to, like, okay, just take it easy on yourself. You will get there eventually, but know that it's going to take time. And that might sound like a cliche, but it's going to be worth it if you just, be patient and let yourself grow as a person first, and then you will eventually start to grow as an artist.
I love that, man. That's a great note. Is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Shout out the two guys who kind of helped made that experience easier. It's Brandon Foye and Kurtz. I still talk to those guys to this day, and we're still in that. It still feels like a support. We can support one another because we went through the same experience, and we check up on each other in life. And we still look up one another and kind of get each other's projects. So I love those guys. They're my brothers, and happy I went through that with them. I don't know if you can use this, but I want to say my mother, but she's no longer here though. But losing her taught me a lot. So
yeah, 100%. That's one of the best shout outs that you can do, man.
Yeah, it feels, I got a lot of perspective from losing her, and I still kind of want to make her proud of what I'm doing.
So
yeah, I will go. Thanks.
Thanks again, Maro, for coming on and doing this, dude. I have a hard time expressing the gratitude that I feel. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil. I mean, yeah, it is cathartic. Really appreciate it.
Shout Out is an Ellering Stories production. For more episodes, visit elleringstories.com.